Okay, ciao everyone. Welcome to another webinar. Today is very interesting. It's refreshing to me because it's got solutions to it. So not only are we going to talk about issues, please put your questions in the Q&A box, and maybe he'll have some solutions for specific questions and time for it. So uh, really, this is what the presentation is focused on. And the presentation is by Mauro Camuzzi. He's the president of the Paving Lady. But before we get started, I want to mention some housekeeping things. This is a 1-hour CEU credit for all the managers that are on today. It is a operations or an ELE elective class. And please allow 7 to 10 days to get your credits posted and downloaded on the DVPR record. We have quite a few people that are getting on, and we need a little time just to make sure we get everything posted. We have about, like I just said, over 200 people registered today, and your questions hopefully will all get answered. If not, they are being downloaded for Morrow to get back to you at a later date, either by email or phone call. So put your name at the end, if you could, of your question, and he will find it on the registration list from today. If you have any comments, please put those into the chat box today. And I do want to thank everyone that's on today, board members and CAMs, especially for choosing our webinar to join in on. I know you have other choices, but we appreciate you joining in on ours. I'm continually impressed by the volunteer board members who do take their position seriously and get all the knowledge that you can from these education webinars. I think it's helpful to the managers, and makes it easier on the managers if the boards are also informed and educated. So note also that I'll be sending out a recording and the slides along with the sponsor sheet following the webinar, usually by the next day. So let's get started and meet our professional and experienced sponsors. We're going to start with Vinteum Software. We have Katie Bassford on today. She's the National Sales Executive. That's your official title, right?
Yes, it is, Peggy.
Tell us about yourself and what does Vinteum do for associations?
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. Vinteum provides essentially HOA and condo management platforms. So we provide public-facing websites, we provide communication tools with your residents, features like e-voting, Zoom integration, financials. So really kind of a one-stop shop for everything that you need for community association management. We do help you stay compliant with all of those changing requirements when it comes to website laws and things like that for community associations. So if you have concerns about compliance or you just want to improve communication and transparency, I would love to chat with you. Please reach out. I would love to get a personalized demo scheduled and just chat with you a little bit more about your needs.
Okay, and if you're in South Florida, I want to mention that Katie will be in town on the afternoon of June 10th, all day on June 11th, and at an event that we're having called the President's Club with Palm Beach County, and that's on the 12th. So she'll be giving a private demo on that day too. But if you want a private demonstration, please reach out to Katie from the sponsor sheet. Her email and phone number's on there, and we'll get you on the schedule for that. I also want to say honorable mention to the team at Vinteum. They do support my webinars with all the background of setting everything up and making sure that this runs smoothly. So thank you to Julia, Amanda, and the rest of your team. Next, I want to introduce Jamie Gelfand. She's VP and Regional Sales Officer at First Citizens Bank. Jamie, tell us about yourself and what you're doing. Getting ready for hurricanes, right?
Good afternoon, Peggy, and welcome to everybody on the webinar today. I'm Jamie Gelfand. As Peggy said, I'm the Regional Sales Officer covering the Tri-County market for First Citizens Bank. In the CAB division, Community Association Banking, we provide lockbox and loans to associations. So if you're working on your milestone or paving projects or any other projects authorized under the declaration of the association, I have loan opportunities to be able to assist. I'll put my information in the chat, and I hope you have a great class.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, next I want to introduce Daniel Baum. He's the CEO and founder of COA Solutions of Florida. He's a very respected insurance broker in the area. And tell us what you're doing, Daniel.
Thanks, Peggy. Appreciate that warm introduction. Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone again today. Very simply, you've probably heard me say this before. I specialize in helping communities find ways to reduce the cost of their property and casualty insurance. For those of you paying attention this year, I'm sure you all are because it's your largest line item in your budget. Property coverages have been coming down. That's been great the past couple of months. Market is definitely hardening a little bit now that we're getting closer to hurricane season. Definitely want to pay attention if your insurance renewal is coming up shortly. Directors and officers policies were really inexpensive the last 2 years, starting to harden up a lot more because of all the issues that have come up, the litigation that's come up with directors and officers, the fraud that's been uncovered. Those prices have been going up. What's my point? The market's always changing, literally on a monthly basis, year over year. You really want to have someone who's looking out for you to make sure that they're shopping your policies on a regular basis and making sure you're getting the best possible coverage at the lowest possible price. Please make sure you're communicating with your agent to make sure they're shopping the market for you before it gets to expiration. If you have any questions or concerns or you'd like a second look, I'm always happy to do that at no cost. I do it as a free service to anyone who's interested. Take a look me up. Happy to help you. Thank you. Have a wonderful seminar today. Have a great weekend if I don't speak to you, and take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. He's really doing a lot, saving people a lot of money, so it's worth the phone call. Next, I want to introduce Shelley Robner. She is driving, so she is mute. Her picture is not up, but she's with Munyon Painting. Shelley, tell us about yourself and what you guys are doing at Munyon for South Florida.
Good afternoon, Peggy. Good afternoon, everybody on the webinar. I do apologize that my video is not up, but as Peggy mentioned, I am driving. So Munyon Painting has been in business for 75 years, 3 generations owned. We handle pretty much the entire state of Florida. We are a general contractor as well, so we can help with anything of your GC needs. We are waterproofing, painting, and electrostatic. So we do high-rise, condo, HOA, commercial, residential, we can do it all. If there is anything that I can do to assist you in your community, please feel free to reach out to me and we can meet or get on a call and we can get something going for you. Have a great webinar. And again, Peggy, thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome. And before you go, would you tell everybody what electrostatic is for? I mean, I know, but I want you to say it for your company because that's something new that I haven't heard anybody mention.
So electrostatic painting is a 2-part component painting that will go on metal. And what it is, it's about 98% transferable. So the product itself sticks and wraps around metal and it gives like a factory finish coating that goes around it. And it holds a 3-year warranty from Assessa. So this product is an amazing product, and there's only a few certified applicators in the state of Florida, and thankfully Munyon Painting is one of them. The product is a little bit more expensive. It's more the process of it, but it's for railings and doors and poles. So if you want to hear definitely more about that, please let me know. We can get some documentation for you and possibly a sample if it's something that your community is looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's very much needed in the area with all the railing. It's certainly not expensive when you compare it to taking out the old railings and installing and buying new railings and then repainting.
Correct.
So I think it's
Yes.
a tremendous savings when you look at the end of the story. Okay, next I'd like to introduce, let's start with Mustafa Abdi. He is the engineer for PD Concrete.
Hey, Peggy, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mustafa Adib. I'm the project manager with PD Concrete Specialist. We are specialized in concrete restoration, post-tension cable repairs, waterproofing, and painting. We've been in business for 21 years, operating from our 2 offices location, one in West Palm Beach and one in Aventura. I'll be happy to assist you to do a free walkthrough if your building needed to gain the 40, 50, 60-year recertificate. We'll be happy to help you. We worked with almost all the good engineers in South Florida, so we know the steps to achieve that. And I was just mentioning to Peggy before this is like everybody asking me when I go for the walkthrough is where to start, what is the first step to do. So I'll be happy to guide you. My background is a construction engineer, so I think I have a good, decent knowledge to guide you through the process to the last day. I'll leave my information in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer any question for you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's awesome. And also he's mentioning how to get started because he's got a new class coming out. And we're looking forward to that. And I hope to present that maybe as soon as July, August at the latest. So congratulations on taking that stuff. That's awesome.
Thank you.
If you want to just wave Dylan, we have Dylan Pena on, the owner's son, I'm going to guess. And
Yes.
anything you'd like to say or have a few words?
No words for today. Thank you.
No
Thank you
words.
for the
Okay,
introduction.
everything's going good. Okay, well, great. I also just want to make honorable mention of another sponsor, Faster IO. I don't know why they're not on today, but Bob Aleka is the contact there. He is the Vice President of Sales, and his counterpart is Michael Zirin. He is the Vice President of Marketing. They are a new way, it's streaming rather than just cable, but a new way to get the same idea with TV stations and so on into your condominiums. And I understand it's a pretty substantial savings. So if you want to get some information on that, if you're about 2 years out for renewing your cable, get a hold of Bob Aleka. And lastly, I want to mention Hafer Company. This is my longtime standing sponsor, CPA service, 4 offices out of the state of Florida. Nicole Johnson is the partner and also the operations manager right here in South Florida. Her counterpart is Mark Landez. He's an auditor and he's also a principal, and both of them are readily accessible if you need to get a hold of something. And I know budgets are coming up, so it might be a good time to talk to them about several things due to about your financing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mauro Camuzzi. He's the president of the Paving Lady, and he's been in business for a long time in paving and asphalt. Mauro, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us what the Paving Lady is doing now and go into your class.
Thank you, Peggy, and thanks to all the sponsors for allowing me to do this as well. Please reach out to them and help them out whenever you need their services. My name is Mauro Camuzzi. I'm president and owner of the Paving Lady. 4 decades we've been in the paving industry. I actually bought the company in 2016. I've been in the paving industry since about 2005. Construction management degree from FIU, hold 2 general contractors licenses. And we, in a nutshell, we get asked a lot what we do. We fix and help maintain asphalt problems. We fix and help prevent asphalt problems. I mean, it's really that simple. Anything that has to do with your asphalt, your sidewalks, your curbs, on the ground. We don't own a ladder, so we don't go above, a foot. So anything on the ground, that's what we do. So we do everything from milling, repaving, seal coating, striping, and any service you have to do with your parking lots. My class today is, a class that what I hope to get from this is to give you guys a little bit of common sense into asphalt and asphalt maintenance. It's not very difficult. And hopefully this class will help give you a little bit more knowledge so you can make some better decisions when it comes to your asphalt maintenance on your properties. So I'm going to start. If you have any questions, put them in the questions and answers. If I think we're going to answer the question during the class, I will say that. Katie will let me know. I will say we're going to answer that a little bit later. And then if we have some time at the end, I will answer all the questions that I can. Okay? Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here. And we're going to go. Perfect. Everybody see that? We're good? Awesome. All right. My class, Common Asphalt Issues and Solutions. Again, I'm Mauro Camuzzi, and hopefully we will learn a little bit of common sense in asphalt. This slide right here is pretty much where I like to spend a lot of time on. I think this is one of the most important things to learn in this, short class that we do. I think it's very difficult to maintain a surface or anything that you're trying to maintain if you don't understand what it's made up and how it was built. I think you get better decisions if you know how one thing affects the other. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on this slide alone. When you all look at your parking lots or your roadways and your condos or your HOAs, typically what you look at is you're looking at the asphalt pavement and you think that that's your road or that's your parking lot. It's part of it. It's just one course of many that make up that roadway or parking lot. Think of it as a cake. And you can see this in the top right-hand corner. This picture that you see here, you see different courses. Just like you slice a cake open, you're going to see different courses. What's important to understand about these courses is they cannot survive for a long period of time without each other. Does that make sense? One cannot survive for long term without the other. The three of these are the four courses. I'm going to talk about South Florida. We have three courses. These three courses, when put together, can last 20, 30 years. And that's how they complement each other and help each other survive long term. So, I could put 4 inches of asphalt down in a parking lot with no base or sub base. And as soon as the car runs over, it's going to break. Same thing with the other ones. So very important that you understand that these courses work together to provide a long lasting roadway of parking. Okay. So let's start with what's called the sub base course. The sub base course, this one on the bottom, realistically, what you're looking at there is your native soil. What is there in the site before it was ever built? Typically, that's what you have. Why I say typically is because sometimes if you're close to the beach or you're close to a swamp area like the Everglades, there may be some material in there that won't allow it to compact very well. So you might have to take that out and put new sub-base material in so you can achieve compactability. Most of you will never see this. Most of you inherited a parking lot or a roadway that's already built. But it's important that you understand what you're looking at on your pavement, that this is something that's below it and how it affects everything above it. So again, sub-base course was your native soil. If it wasn't good enough for compaction, they brought in new soil, compacted it, and got it to a point where it was ready to receive some loads. The next one, which is your base course. This course right here is the one that typically will take most of your loads. Your surface, which is your asphalt, is not a big load bearing, can't really take a lot of load. The base course is what can take the heavy, trucks, the heavy cars, your contractors on your HOAs and your condos. That base course is really what's taking up most of those loads. So it's probably one of the most important parts of this, but without the others, it cannot survive. So what is your base course made up of? Here in South Florida, again, I know I have people from all over the state probably on this, but I'm going to talk really what's really in our area. And you can probably apply it to yours because Florida is pretty much the same, except when you get into some areas that might have some more clay. So your base course here is usually lime rock or shell rock. And anything south of Fort Lauderdale or south of, let's say, Pompano in the 80s was, or before that, was made up of what's called shell rock, lime rock. Lime rock is probably one of the best base materials that you can get. The other one was shell rock. Anything above, let's say 595 or Pompano area, was what's called shell rock. And shell rock and lime rock, once they are installed, they're equally the same. The problem is with shell rock, it's easily disturbed. So shell rock, if you put it in and you compact it and you get it nice and tight and compacted, ready to receive the asphalt on top of it, if you disturb it too quickly with either weather, water, traffic, it will break up pretty fast. Lime rock, on the other hand, will not. Lime rock will handle some, traffic, some weather, some different, issues that might happen during construction. But that base course, the lime rock or the shell rock, is really what's going to carry the load of your traffic on your roadways or parking lots. Typically, about 8 inches is what you're seeing nowadays, sometimes up to 12, depending on how the engineers decided to design this. Now remember, you are probably will never see this unless you have a pothole, right? When you have a pothole, you'll be able to see your shell rock or your lime rock. But this is what you're inheriting. You're inheriting a sub base and a base course and the surface course, which is asphalt, right? But in the base course, let's remember something. If it's installed 8 inches, compacted, you know, everything is great, tight, they compact it again, you know, it will survive loads and it will survive traffic. It will survive a lot of things. One of the things that it will not survive is weather. And here in South Florida, we've got a lot of rain. So think of your surface course, which is your asphalt pavement, as your waterproofing blanket on your parking lot or roadway. That's truly what it is. You know, this asphalt right here, this little bit of asphalt that goes on top of your rock base course is really what's a waterproofing blanket. And what it does is it keeps your base rock protected from the elements, from traffic and everything. It kind of locks everything in. And what you use for that is called asphalt pavement. Why do I call it asphalt pavement? Well, everybody understands that asphalt is a liquid. When you add aggregate to it, which is rocks of every different size, from sand all the way to 3/4 inch particles, aggregate, that's when you add that together and you mix it, you get what's called asphalt pavement. And what makes asphalt pavement so good for roadways or anything else is that it's flexible. You know, you can't really see it, but this asphalt, if you start to bend it, it will bend. It'll break too, but it will bend. So it's good because it bends with the loads that go on top of it. So the asphalt pavement is made up of aggregate and asphalt. Here in South Florida, and in a lot of places in Florida, we use 2 different types of asphalt, type S and type SP. On roadways and things like that, like the Turnpike, I-95, or your major thoroughfares, you use different types of mixes, but we won't talk about that. I want to talk about only the ones that we use probably in HOAs and your condo associations. And that's a type S or an SP9, an SP. 2 different types. The S, you have S1, S2, and S3. The 1, 2, and 3 are the different size of aggregates, right? So if you can see this, you can see that this one up here has smaller aggregate than this one down here, right? So type S1 has the largest aggregate. Type S2, a little bit smaller. Type S3, the smallest. What you will find in your HRAs or your condos is type S3 most of the time. Why? Because aesthetically, it looks better. Aesthetically, you don't see those rocks, right? You see less rocks because asphalt's made up of mostly rocks. So S3 asphalt is what you're typically seeing. You know, about 20 years ago, you know, with technology, many different municipalities and DOT around the country decided, you know what, how do we come up with better material, better asphalt? And what they decided to do was make an asphalt that was longer lasting, a little bit better with the elements, oil, gas, the sun. So what did they do? They created what's called super pave, the SP asphalt. Super pave is really asphalt that is, the biggest difference between the super pave and the S type is the quality control that goes into it, from the mixing to the placement, from the plant all the way out to the contractor doing the work. Plus, they modified the polymer, the asphalt itself. They made it better with polymers. So you've got what's called polymer modified asphalt, and the quality control gives you super pave asphalt. Now, super pave asphalt, you have 9.5, 12.5, and 19.5. And all that means, those numbers like 1, 2, and 3 in the S types, 9.5 is 9.5 millimeters is the average aggregate size. So 9.5 is typically what you're going to find in your HOAs and condos. Why? Because the rocks are smaller. You know, if we installed asphalt with aggregate that size, you know, in your HOA on the surface, you wouldn't like it because the aesthetic nature of it would look good. That's why you want the most smoothest, smaller aggregate that you can. This slide is, like I said, the most important thing. If you can remember, you're dealing with different courses, and what you're trying to do as a property manager, as a homeowner board member, Anybody who owns a parking lot or roadway, you're trying to protect the surface. That's the only thing that you can protect. You can't protect anything underneath it. So all of this comes down to the fact that you're protecting the surface course, and in protecting the surface course, you are therefore protecting everything below it. And that's what you're trying to do to maintain your asphalt to last longer. That make sense? Perfect.
We have a quick question here
Sure.
from Diane. She asked, why are shells used so often as aggregate and asphalt in Florida?
So that's a great question. And that's typically was used back earlier in here in South Florida, they don't use shell rock pretty much anymore. You might find a shell here and there coming out of the lime rock quarries. But before, in the early times, or when I say early times, 70s, 80s, and maybe even beginning of the 90s, they were using from shell rock quarries. And now they have lime rock quarries. And that's typically what you're getting the material from. But the shell comes out of the shell rock quarries.
Perfect. We have a few other questions, but those are more about repairs. So I think we'll wait.
That
till we
will
get to
definitely probably be answered later on. Perfect.
Perfect.
Typical life cycle of asphalt. Let's talk about this. Why do I say typical? Because typically, there is no typical parking lot in condition for a parking lot. Think about this. We as human beings, we have a typical life cycle, right? We have a life cycle as well. The more we take care of it ourselves, the longer typically we should live. So asphalt is never typical. You have different parking lots made of different asphalt mixes from different asphalt plants with different contractors in different locations. What I really want you to take away from this slide is, as asphalt gets older, it needs more maintenance. Kind of sounds like us, right? As we get older, we need more maintenance. It's the same thing with asphalt. But the more maintenance you do to asphalt, preventative maintenance at the beginning, you can extend the life of the asphalt. The more maintenance you do at the beginning of the life cycle of asphalt means that it won't cost you as much in the long run as it gets older. It's kind of like us. When I was younger, I barely took care of myself. Now I'm paying for it. Same thing with asphalt. If you don't do any seal coating or patch anything, it's going to cost you more later. And typically, it's probably, if you do not do something that would cost you, $1 today may cost you $5 if you wait, right? So taking care of it now will cost you less. Really, this graph is going to show you that as you get older, you're going to need, as the asphalt gets older, your parking lot, your roadway, it needs more maintenance. And what you'll find, roadways here in South Florida, when it comes to your HOAs, typically can last you anywhere between 20 and 30 years. Some can last you a little bit more. Parking lots, a little bit less. The reason with parking lots a little bit less is because drainage on parking lots usually works not as well. And two, parking lots, the loads on parking lots is always static load. There's always cars sitting on it, and there's more traffic in parking lots. Okay? So what do you want to take away from this? The longer you wait, the more it's going to cost you. And if you do maintenance early on, your dollar will go further later on. Let's talk about a little bit of the deficiencies that you're going to typically see in your HOAs. There's a lot of different deficiencies. I like to focus on the ones that you will typically see in your HOAs or condos. The one on the top is called alligator cracking. You will see that it looks like alligator skin. And that is typically due to water getting between the asphalt and the rock. Remember the rock base? And there's something, the water, you have your asphalt, and let's say this is your rock base. There's a void, water gets in between it, a car goes over it, cracks it more of a void, water gets in between it, cracks it more. So this is what you're seeing is an ongoing problem. And if you catch it early on, it's going to be an isolated problem. What you're trying to do is get it before it gets to like this picture. Because if it gets to this picture, as that damage continues to grow, because water keeps getting underneath between the asphalt and the rock, and then cars keep driving over it, what's happening is you're furthering that, damage horizontally, and you're seeing it going towards the sides. You want to catch it early on so you can isolate the problem, make one patch. The way you fix that is you isolate the area, you make a square patch, and you remove it and you put in new asphalt. And again, it's important because if you don't get it while it's isolated, you might have to repair an entire area, like an entire entrance to your HOA or an entire cul-de-sac or anything like that. So you might want to take a look at that and make sure that you're catching it early on. South Florida, we don't worry about cracks too much, but when they look like this, we do worry about them. You know, if you're from up north, you notice that you crack fill everything that happens, because in the winter, you might start with a 1/2 inch crack, you'll end up with a 2-inch crack at the end of the winter. And that's from the freeze and the thaw. So when it's just one crack, not to worry. But when it looks like this, like alligator skin, you want to get somebody very quickly to patch it. The crack, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say we had a question about tree roots and cracking.
We will show, that is going to be on my next slide, I believe.
Perfect.
Okay. Reflective cracking. This is something that you really can't control very much. And what this is, and I put it in here because if I had $1 for everybody that asked me, why is my new asphalt cracking? It's probably reflective cracking. It's cracking that's coming from the surface below. Take a look at this picture. This picture, you see the perfect squares. Well, asphalt doesn't crack in this way. This was a concrete parking lot, and these are the joints below reflecting through. So any asphalt surface or any surface that has a crack in it, and you put asphalt on top of it, you're going to get that crack will reflect through with time. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, but it's going to reflect through. What you try to do is you try to minimize that, and we do that with milling, and I'll show you what milling is later on. But reflective cracking is something that you will not eliminate. You can reduce it, but you will never eliminate. And again, reflective cracking is a crack that will transfer from a surface and reflect through to the surface above. Potholes. Potholes are probably one of the things that people are the most familiar with asphalt. Not because you see them, but usually you feel them. You know, you're driving into a hole, and you know they're a very big liability. They cause liability to vehicles, pedestrians, to anything that goes into them, right? So here in South Florida, where we are, we're attacked from the surface and from below the surface. And what do I mean by that? Well, we have water, 6 feet below the surface, some places 3 feet below the surface, constantly moving. And what that causes is sometimes that subbase that we talked about in the first slide to shift and fall. And when that happens, you get a small sinkhole. You up north, when I mean up north in, the Orlando area outside of there, Zephyr Hills, Land O'Lakes, you can go to sleep and you have a neighbor, and the next thing you know, the next day, the neighbor's house is gone. It's because of the sinkhole. Kind of the same situation, but on a smaller scale here. What you see here is, if you look at these pictures, is water has gotten in between, on the surface, between the asphalt and the rock again. And the more cars that drive over it, the more that pothole is going to form. And you notice in this picture, in these two pictures, you'll notice that there's more cracking, and that's because it's not being addressed. The more water that gets in, the more of that rock base that gets disturbed, and the more that pothole is going to grow either down or horizontally. The alligator cracking that we pointed out to you in the beginning will probably turn into a large pothole at some point if you don't take care of it. These are smaller isolated potholes that you see the pictures of, but again, it's very important that you find them, see them, and take care of them very quickly. How do you do that? Well, you do a patch again. You cut out the asphalt square, you remove the asphalt, you put in some new rock if need be, or asphalt to fill the hole, and then you finish up with a good layer of asphalt on the top. That's called a full depth patch, and we'll show you what that is a little bit later in the slide. In the presentation, I'm sorry. Root damage. So this is somebody just asked a question about root damage. So South Florida or anywhere in the country, we have, here in South Florida, we have ficus, we have palms, we have oaks, we have black olives, anything else with a root. This is prevalent. I mean, unfortunately, the way municipalities down here require shade trees to be put into islands and different places, you're going to deal with this. And it's also a very big liability. I don't believe that there's a way to eliminate it completely, but you can minimize it by by doing different things, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But if you see this picture, you're going to notice that you have a ficus hedge real close, and on the top there's a tree. These roots are popping the asphalt up and disturbing the rock base. This not only is destructive to your asphalt and your rock, but also any pedestrians or people on a bicycle or anybody walking through this area could trip and fall and cause injury to them. So it's very important that you identify the areas that you're going to have this. And, once you take care of this, it's probably going to happen again. A tree will never stop growing. A root will always try to find water somewhere. So it's very important to continuously prune your roots and have your landscaping company outside the asphalt do as much as pruning and making sure that they're keeping them at bay. But in the asphalt, when we would fix this, we come in, we isolate the area, we go as far as the root damage is, you cut out all the asphalt, remove it, cut the roots at the asphalt edge, remove them, put back new base and new asphalt, and patch it with a full depth patch. Sometimes if the root is too big, you may have to get an arborist involved. If we feel that that root is so big that it could cause some damage to the tree or destabilize the tree, we may ask, get an arborist, we'll pop the asphalt out. Somebody comes in and prunes the root, without killing the tree. And a lot of municipalities ask you to use an arborist anyways. They may ask you to say, look, I know you need to patch this, but an arborist has to do it. But again, you would take this out, full depth patch, and remove it. You can prevent this or minimize this with root barriers, which are sold, and your landscaping company could probably do that. And what that is a fabric that's installed about a foot back. It's a trench with a fabric that's hung in the trench, and then you backfill it. And when the root hits it, it will kill the root, but not the tree. Does that make sense? Kills the root, but not the tree. All right. But you know what? Nature will win. Nature will win. All right.
Can I interject something?
Sure.
Having formerly been in the landscaping business, just a warning, if you take a tree out, you have to replace it. You could try to go unnoticed, but if you do, possibly your county or city will fine you. So if you remove one, you can't just toss it. You have to replace it with a like tree. If you want to change that, then you have to get it approved by your city or county. 9 chances out of 10. I know, especially in like Boca Raton, they do have separate horticultural managers in most of these cities, so they are out watching. So just to give you a heads up.
And the truth of the matter is, Peggy and everybody listening, at least down here for us, it's usually easier. You could probably kill your neighbor before you can replace a tree. It's that hard. I mean,
Exactly.
It really is that hard. I mean, you can go in and ask and show them the damage that the tree is doing. And a lot of cities and municipalities don't want to hear it, but I get it. The trees are beautiful to provide the shade. But yeah, you're right. You definitely want to watch it. And it is getting harder and harder to replace trees, but you do have to replace them with like kind or maybe even more, so good. That's a great tip, Peggy.
You're welcome.
Oil damage. This is usually, typically you would think that it's isolated to like condos that have parking areas, but actually HOAs. I mean, where do you usually find it in HOAs? Trash trucks, contractors, anybody with a truck that's leaking oil. Trash trucks are culprits because they leak the hydraulic oil. And, one of the most important things about oil damage is you want to try to isolate it as quickly as you possibly can. If you have oil damage in your parking stalls, if somebody spills gas, oil, or anything like that on asphalt, it's going to deteriorate it pretty quickly. These spots, if you look at these spots that you see here on this picture, if you took a key and you try to pick out the asphalt in the dark black area where the oil is, you can pick it out like butter. If you tried it right there where the gray area is right outside it, you can't put your key into it. It breaks it down pretty fast. And what you try to do to minimize this is you number one, you want to make sure that your residents in your condos are keeping up with their maintenance in their cars and tell them that they could be liable if they cause the damage. The other thing you do is seal coat. We'll talk about what seal coating does later, but seal coating acts like a waterproofing barrier or some kind of like wax on a car. keeps the damage and everything on top. So, it doesn't penetrate and actually cause damage to the asphalt. Dawn soap works very well for oil spots. If you have somebody spilled oil, you put some Dawn soap on it, scrub it. It kind of degreases it a little bit and it breaks it down. But if it gets to the point where you have to replace it, you do what's called a full depth patch. You cut it out square, remove it, put that back new asphalt. I would advise anybody that's doing a new paving job on a parking lot and you have deeded spots where you can tell where people are parking, you put everybody on notice that if they cause damage to it, they could be liable for it. You're just trying to minimize the amount of oil that gets down your parking lot. If you do a job for your HOA and your roadways, you want to tell your trash company or anybody else, contractors, pool, landscaping, anybody, that if they spill anything, they're going to be liable to clean it up and to fix any damage.
We had a quick question here about seal coating that you had mentioned.
Sure.
They said, my experience with seal coating is that when used on alligator cracking, it's more evident. Why don't the counties use it if it's any good? So sounds like this person isn't convinced on seal coating.
Well, so what I would tell you is I would never seal coat an alligator area. I would have fixed it and patched it first, then seal coated it after the asphalt cured. Seal coat doesn't fix anything. Seal coat does a couple of things, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. It's more of a maintenance procedure, and I'll talk about what that entails later when we talk about seal coating. But you're right, seal coating a cracked area. What I always say, if you have a cracked up parking lot and you seal coat it, you're gonna have a black cracked up parking lot. It's not gonna take away the cracks. It's just going to mask them a little bit. But we could talk about that later. Why seal coating I think is so important.
Perfect. We had one more question about the safety of the ingredients in seal coating. This person says that members of their association have some concerns. They have some health issues. So there's some safety concerns about the ingredients in seal coating.
Let's talk about that a little bit later. I want to make sure I'm talking about the other things. When we get to seal coat, I can talk about the concerns about what they're having, and then hopefully I can answer their question.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oops, I'm going backwards. All right. Water's the enemy. What you're trying to do is you're trying to avoid water penetration into the asphalt, or sitting on your asphalt. Water that sits on your asphalt for too long is bad. Water that penetrates the asphalt, that gets into the base and causes the base to, be destabilized is bad as well. So let's talk about that water. Look at these two puddles at the bottom, right? The one on the right, we call a bird bath. The one on the left, I call a duck pond because it's, deeper than 2 inches. So typically, if 48 hours, if a puddle evaporates within 48 hours, typically that is ideal. Within the 48 hours is not going to cause anything. Even DOT says anything within 48 hours that evaporates, it's not considered anything. They'll let that go. Anything after that's there after 48 hours could become a problem to your asphalt. Now, if the puddle on the left, one of the things that's really difficult for us is to move water to get it to the drain because we're very flat down here in South Florida. Everything's very flat. 2% is very, very flat, and it's typically the slopes that we have in our parking lots. But if you have an area that is very deep here in South Florida, let's say 2 inches like that on the left, we can come in and patch it, make it flat again. That water then gets dispersed over a larger area, which makes it evaporate quicker. So if you have a 2-inch deep puddle and you flatten it out and you take that, that depression out and you make it, flat, that water now, even if it doesn't get to a drain, but it kind of gets spread out on the asphalt. And here in South Florida on a hot day after it rains, it'll probably evaporate in the next 24 hours. So that's probably the best thing that we can do to try to make it better. If it's close to a drain, I think we can get it into the drain, but it all really depends on how close it is and how deep that water is. This slide is probably just me telling you guys that it's very, very difficult to make the right decision of what you're trying to do with paving. I think it's or asphalt maintenance. You're trying to make sure that your dollar goes as far as you possibly can. You know, it's very important for you to find somebody that's going to tell you what you need to hear about your pavement and not what you want to hear. You know, sometimes seal coating is not the answer. Sometimes paving is not needed yet. You know, so you want somebody that's going to tell you the right thing. And it's very difficult if you don't have that knowledge. And if you don't have that person that you can trust that can tell you that. So I do feel for you, especially your property managers and board presidents and board members. You're trying to be as responsible for your HOA. And I know that that's difficult, but find somebody that will tell you what you need to hear. Find somebody that's going to teach you about the issues that you're having. You know, that's very important for you guys. Let's talk about some of the things that, you know, we just said. You know, what should you do and when should you do it? You know, asphalt overlaying is putting asphalt on top of asphalt. So that's, you have asphalt that's in good condition still, and you put asphalt on top of that. That's called an overlay. Okay. You're not touching the asphalt that's there. You're not removing the asphalt that's there. You're just putting asphalt on top of asphalt. When is that acceptable to do? Okay. So we learned that you have reflective cracking, right? So if asphalt, the original asphalt is very cracked up, you want to do something to it before you put asphalt on top of it. So asphalt that's, you know, not that bad, you know, call it 50, 60% is in really good condition. And you've got some cracks here and there that are not that bad. You don't have any alligatoring, you don't have any huge, you know, potholes, anything like that, you can overlay. Right? So the asphalt has to be in pretty good condition. And where do you typically see that? Roadways. Roadways are typically ones that the asphalt's typically in good condition after 15 years. If you overlay it, put another asphalt course on top of it, you can add another 30 years to that. You still have the 10 years that was left on the original. Now you're going to have more asphalt on top, giving you a thicker asphalt layer that's going to give you a better structural number. What's important about overlaying is you want to make sure that your contractor matches all the existing elevations of your concrete gutters, your manholes, your sidewalks, your handicap ramps. So you want the two surfaces to meet, right? Because an overlay, you're adding an inch. So the way you do that is, if you look at this picture up here, you notice that you have a valley gutter, a gutter up against the driveways. We would remove the asphalt 2 to 3 feet outside of that concrete to allow the new asphalt to finish flush. Does that make sense? So you're taking asphalt away from the concrete right in front of it so you can finish flush more asphalt. So basically, you have asphalt, you have concrete, and you want your asphalt to finish flush again. If you left the old asphalt there, you would be an inch above it. But if you remove the asphalt that's up against the concrete for 2 to 3 feet back, you're going to finish flush against it. So you want to make sure that your contractor is giving you that flush finish at all your concrete and your manholes. Okay. And overlaying, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're taking an asphalt layer, putting another asphalt layer on top, and we apply something called tack. Tack is a glue to glue both of those surfaces together. Asphalt milling. So remember we were talking about the reflective cracking? And one of the ways to minimize that is to mill the surface first. So let me kind of break it down in another way. You know, everybody here has had a wood deck or something like that that's very rough. Before you finish it, what do you have to do? Sand the wood deck, get rid of all that damage, get rid of all that rough surface, and then you would finish it. Well, milling is kind of the same way. So let's say you had almost 1.5 inches of asphalt. The top doesn't look really good. It's cracked. There's a lot of cracks in it. You know, you have cracks, you know, in many areas, and you don't want those to reflect through. So you do what's called milling. And in this procedure, if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see a big machine that is taking up asphalt and putting it into a truck. That machine is called a milling machine, and it's taking off a certain amount of asphalt. So asphalt this thick, let's say we want to take out 2 inches because the top is bad. It takes off the 2 inches, and then you put asphalt on top of that. Here in South Florida, we typically mill an inch and put back an inch from most of the HOAs that we do or parking lots that we do. But if you have a lot more asphalt, you can take off more, right? So what that does is it takes away a lot of the surface cracking. So a crack, typically a crack in asphalt. So if you ever looked at a crack in asphalt, I don't have one on this one, but if there was a crack here and I turned it sideways, you would notice that typically it would be bigger at the top than it would be at the bottom. So that's the typical characteristic of a crack. It's a little bit wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And if you mill the surface, you're removing that surface course a little bit. And what that's doing, it's either going to remove the entire crack, or that crack can go from a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch, therefore giving you a better surface, and the reflective cracking may take longer to get through. That makes sense? Okay. So milling and repaving is one of the things that we're seeing a lot of right now. And it's probably something that's going to give you, what you're trying to do is get to a good base to pave on, right? So if the top isn't so good, this is great asphalt on the top. You see how smooth it is. But if it wasn't so good and you take off an inch, you put an inch back, it's a maintenance procedure that can, give you another 20 years to your asphalt. And then if you don't do any maintenance and you don't do anything, you always have what's called repaving or reclamation. And that's what you're trying to stay away from. You're trying to make sure that you're extending the life of that pavement as long as possible, because if you have to remove all the asphalt and some of the base, you're going to be paying a lot more money. There's a municipality here in South Florida that I just saw a bid come through for full depth reclamation, and that's very expensive. They're taking out the asphalt, they're taking out the rock, and they're reworking the sub base because they let it go too far. So you definitely never want to get there. Most of the time, I never see anybody get to that level of repair, because most of the time, condo presidents and condo boards and property managers are doing the right thing and doing the maintenance that they need to do. This is typically the most, common thing you're going to see in your, asphalt maintenance, life. It's patching. Patching is typically something that's done, and, almost every asphalt parking lot's been patched with something, because, there's always an issue at some point in the lifespan of that asphalt. Let me talk about a few things about patching, right? There's 3 different types of patches that I think we don't use all 3, but they're typically seen in the market. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those. You got cold patch, you got skin patches, and you got full depth patching. I've talked a lot about the full depth in my presentation so far, but I want to talk about the other 2. Cold patch. Cold patch, if you don't know what that is a asphalt material that you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy. You can go right now to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy a bag of cold patch asphalt. 20 years ago, the technology wasn't so great and it wasn't so good. Today, it's not bad. But what is it good for? It's good for temporary repairs, to reduce a liability and to not let that pothole or the damaged area get any worse, right? So what you're doing is you're minimizing a liability, and you're minimizing the further damage of that area. You can see it in potholes. You see it, you can use it in potholes, some damaged areas. And what you see, if you see the top right-hand picture, you see a guy with a tamper, and you see the bags. A little secret: if you need that many bags that you see in the back of that pickup truck, you need a new parking lot. Don't try to patch it. You need a new parking lot. So what do? They pour this asphalt into a hole, and then they tamp it, and that gives you a temporary repair. And I'm going to repeat that: temporary. It's not long-term. It's only going to be short-term. You're going to need to probably do a full depth patch at some time. Skin patches, or skim patches, they've called as well. are if you have alligator cracking. I'm going to use alligator cracking as an example. Let's say you're a condo association that's getting your roofs done right now, and you know you're going to pave your parking lot as soon as you're done with your roofs in the next few months. But there's an area of damage that you want to take care of, so you don't want it to get worse and get into the base. And let's say that your entrance has alligator cracking that we showed earlier on. Well, you can put that glue that I talked about called tack on top of that whole area, then take asphalt, put it on top of that, spread the asphalt out, and compact it with a roller. What that's going to give you is just a skim patch or a skim patch. It's just asphalt on top of asphalt, but that's very temporary because remember what we talked about, if you have damage below, it's going to reflect through. So, but you do that because it doesn't cost you as much. And you know that once you're done with the roofing repairs, you're going to do that mill and pave or the repaving of your road, and you're going to take care of that damage anyways when you do that. So skin patches are temporary to put something, just very temporary to eliminate a liability or to allow, not allow further damage. Well, what do we believe in and what do I always try to make sure our customers do? Full depth patching, permanent repairs. It's, removing all of the asphalt that you see, getting to the base in this middle picture, and getting to the base, recompacting the base, and then putting asphalt back into the hole. I don't like this middle picture. I use it because I like to show an example. The reason I don't like it, I like squares and rectangles. I don't like a patch that's not squared out. This one, you see this top corner here is adding, another corner into the mix. And corners I don't like because they're weak points in asphalt and they're weak point in construction. So squares and rectangles is what we like. And once you remove all the asphalt and recompact the base, you put asphalt back in that, like in that bottom picture. Now you see that bottom picture, the asphalt starts out black and then it oxidizes over time with the sun. And you will see that, everything around it is gray. Well, this patch will turn gray in the future after being out in the sun for a while. So what I want you to remember is anything other than a full depth patch is a temporary repair. Full depth patch is a permanent repair.
We do have a question about repairs, specifically for parking garages.
Okay.
So Karen asked, how can you fix bad asphalt in a parking garage? Asphalt was cold when put down.
Okay. So, in a parking garage, you would do it the same way. If you're going to patch something, you would patch it by using hot asphalt. You would cut it out just like you would outside the garage. You would use the hot patch that we were talking about. That not cold patch. You use hot mix from an asphalt plant. If it's a small repair, that's how you would do it. If it's a larger repair, and if it's a parking garage that's very, let's call it restricted to height and to widths, and it's usually a parking garage is very restricted. You may not be able to use the same equipment that you would use, let's say, on a parking lot outside. So you're going to there's a little bit of a different way to fix that, but it will not be the same way you fix it outside. But if it's a repair like a pothole, you would fix it the same way. You saw cut it, remove it, and use hot mix asphalt to fix.
Perfect.
And then seal coating. We're at pretty much at the last here, and hopefully I can answer the questions that I had about seal coating. I get asked a lot about if I believe in seal coating, and somebody asked me, I think somebody asked, why don't people seal coat also, right? Well, people ask me if seal coating, if I believe in it. Now, wholeheartedly, I say yes, only if it's done at the right time. And I'm going to repeat that. Only if it's done at the right time. Now, let me give you an example. If we decided right now, everybody here on the panel, Katie and everybody in the panel, we decided to go to the beach today and it's very sunny. We get to the beach at 8 o'clock in the morning. We start having a discussion. We cook something. We're having some drinks. At 2 o'clock, start to see our skin, and we're starting to see that we're sunburned. And now we decide to put sunblock on at 2 o'clock. damage is done. It's too late. Same thing with asphalt. Remember, asphalt wears from the top down. The bottom doesn't get damaged from the sun, but the top does. One of the worst enemies of asphalt is UV rays, right? That's why you see asphalt turn that gray color, because it gets oxidized by the sun. And when it gets oxidized by the sun, what it does, it makes the polymer that's in there, the black, the asphalt, the binder that's holding everything together, it makes it brittle. And when it makes it brittle, it starts to lose its thickness from the top down. So it starts to lose thickness from the top down. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect that asphalt. You're trying to protect that binder. And seal coat is the perfect way to do it. You apply the sealer 1 year after brand new asphalt. Why 1 year? Asphalt, to cure, the oils in this have to come to the surface. So from the bottom here, they have to come up to the surface. Once they get to the surface, they evaporate, and then you can seal coat asphalt. If you seal coat too early, two things are happening. Your asphalt won't cure. Usually 6 months, 8 months is good. I like a year, but 6 months, 8 months is plenty, especially here in South Florida. And what you do, if you seal coat it too early, two things. One, it won't cure. And the other one, the sealer won't adhere well because there's still oil in the asphalt. So it will wear prematurely. So, as little as 6 months, I like to wait a year if you have that time available to do that. There's two different types of asphalt, and one is coal tar and the other one's asphalt emulsion. And Katie, I think this is the question that they were asking. So there's been some studies that say that coal tar emulsion has more PAHs and carcinogens in it, cancer-causing elements in it, than asphalt emulsion. It's always that, there's always that discussion. Yes, asphalt emulsion has less PAHs and VOCs. Coal tar has more PAHs and VOCs. They both have them. One has more than the other. So, to me, we use coal tar. We like using coal tar. I believe that as long as people aren't there breathing in the overspray from what we are doing, we are safe. I think that there's a lot more that I could spend on this, but I think that comes down to either coal tar having more PAHs or VOCs than asphalt emulsion. So if one person, if an HOA is more sensitive to that, use asphalt emulsion instead of coal tar emulsion. But anything you use will have PAHs or VOCs. How do you install? How do you apply it? Seal coat? You can do it two ways. You can do it with a squeegee or brush, or with spray. So squeegee, brush, or you would spray. We like to do 1 coat squeegee, 1 coat spray the first time, and after that, 2 coats of spray. Remember, you want to do 2 coats, not 1 thick coat or 2 thick coats. You want to do 2 equally applied coats to make sure that you're not over applying it, because too much sealer can crack your asphalt as well. It's been shown that seal coating your parking lot on the correct intervals will typically 3 to 5 years will typically add, 20 to 30% life to your asphalt. So that's it. That's all I have. What other questions do we have? We have time to answer them.
Yeah, so we got a couple more in the Q&A, and everybody, we have some time, so if there's any more lingering questions, pop them in there. But we'll start with Luisa's question. She said, what do you recommend to put on the hallways and stairs? They were painted with cheap paint that is peeling off of the floor. I live in Century Village of West Palm Beach, 2-story building. Maybe you know it.
So I would ask a painting or some kind of surface contractor, because we typically don't do that. Stairs in a building. But I would think that some sort of concrete stain that has some aggregate on it, so it's not slippery. That's what I would think. But I'm not an expert at that. I would tell you that you would want to ask a painting contractor or a flooring.
Perfect. And then we have Yvette's question, which is, in a new asphalt, we have areas that create puddles. What is the best way to fix it?
So That typically in those areas, you want to do what's called, depending on the size of it. Here's what I always want my owners to understand. If the puddle or the area that's holding water evaporates quick enough that is not a burden to you or the HOA, it's probably better to leave it. And I'll tell you why, because sometimes the
Not
The re-
for,
the remedy is worse than the disease, right? The cure is worse than the disease. So you don't want to patch asphalt too much that's brand new, but one of the ways you can do it is what's called heating and sanding. And that is, we come in when it's dry, you reheat that area to loosen that asphalt and reheat it up so you can work the asphalt again. You add more asphalt into that area to make it level, and then you re-roll it and recompact it, because asphalt you can reheat. In the summertime, asphalt gets up to 130. You could put your bike down and your kickstand will go into the asphalt in the summertime, right? Well, you can reheat it with infrared or with a torch, add some more asphalt, rework it all, and then recompact it, and it should be level to get the water to move.
Perfect. We have one more from an anonymous attendee. Is it a waste of money to reseal a parking lot when the seal coating does little to fill in the cracks?
So I would say it depends on the condition of all of the parking lot. I mean, in up north, a lot of people that come here from the north really focus on the cracks, and because up north all they do is crack fill. Here in South Florida, a crack is normal. Cracking of asphalt is expected. We've never installed a parking lot that hasn't cracked, and that doesn't mean we do it bad. It just means it's a characteristic of asphalt. Just like concrete, it's a characteristic of concrete that it will crack at some point. The idea is to keep an eye on the cracks themselves. And like I showed you in the alligator cracking, if you have cracks that are very, centralized to one area, then that's a problem. But if you have one long crack here and there, not a huge concern unless that crack starts to open up. But I would believe that you seal coat because the majority of the parking lot is in good shape. You want to take care of that asphalt.
Okay. We got another couple of seal coating questions here. So Tom asked, can you provide for seal coating a rough order of magnitude cost?
That's a loaded question, but I can try. You could go anywhere from 15 cents up to 30 cents, depending on how big the parking lot is per square foot. 15 cents to 30 cents a square foot. Depends on how big the parking lot is. And if you have a really, really small, parking lot with 4 stalls in front of a condo, it might be, a minimum cost to go out and seal coat, which could cost you, over $1,000, a couple $1,000 bucks.
Perfect. And then we have Jessica that says, are there any benefits to seal coating an HOA community when the asphalt is over 15 years old?
I would say it depends on what's been done to it before and what the condition of the asphalt is, right? So if it's been seal coated before, sure, you could still seal coat it. And there is some benefit to it because you're allowing the sealer to take the brunt of, your oil, UV rays, water, but if you're going to be million paving in a year, you want to do that, then don't do it. But if your parking lot nothing has really been done in a great, let's call it in the right intervals, and it's very rough and it's very, let's call it rocky, because when asphalt starts to wear from the top down, it starts to have a lot of aggregate showing. And if there's a lot of aggregate that's on the top and it's, you can feel it with your hand and you feel that those rocks are outside of that asphalt already, then I would say no. It would be more of an aesthetic thing, but it's going to wear off prematurely.
Okay. And she followed up and said, never seal coated, nothing ever done. So it sounds like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't seal coat it. I wouldn't seal coat it. If it's all rough, if the roadway is rough, the good thing about an HOA, roadways that are crowned in the middle, what I mean crowned in the middle, they look like this, they're crowned in the middle, so the water goes to a valley gutter. If that's the case, sometimes those roadways still look pretty good. So I would call somebody and have them look at it and see if, what they think. I would tell you my first instinct would probably be no. But you know, I've seen some parking lots, some roadways that have lasted a long time.
Perfect. Awesome. So Jessica says thank you. And then it looks like we have one last one here, unless we have a couple more trickling in. But Cheryl asked, do you do testing on communities that are getting ready for transition from the builder to the residents?
Well, you're talking about it. Typically, what's going to happen on those is there's going to be a 558 claim. I mean, I believe that that's what's going to happen there. Typically, the HOA. Let me talk with my experience. We do a lot of stuff for developers as they're developing the properties. At the end of when they're handing over that HOA, from the builder, the developer to the HOA, there's typically an attorney involved for the HOA. And what that attorney will do is they will hire an engineer to go out and inspect everything, the roadway, the buildings, the grass, everything that was installed. And then they will, at that point, come up with a report for the developer to fix those issues. We don't do the testing. I would get an engineer to do that. But we do the fixing because typically we've done the work.
Perfect. Well, I think at this point that is the rest of our Q&A here. I know some folks are asking for your phone number, Mauro, so it sounds like you have some conversations to follow.
All right, you can reach me personally here at the office. I'll give you two numbers. One is 561-572-2600. That is my office number. You can ask for myself, Mauro. Make sure you let them know that you are calling from the class that I did. And my cell phone is 305-469-0935. And if you leave a message, make sure you let me know that is from the class that I did.
Perfect. Oh, okay. There's a few more Q&As, but they're just saying thank you and that they appreciated the presentation. So that was great.
Thank you. I'm going to stop my share.
Perfect. Some really great information there.
Yeah, it was very good information. Gosh. That's why I try to get you once a year at least for everybody. So let me close by just saying thank you to everyone, the board members and CAMs again, and also to my sponsors, especially to Mauro and Katie. And I'll just mention a few by name, what type of webinars are coming up. I have several. I'm being very blessed, I guess. Let's start with May 22nd. I've got an engineering class by UPE. I have Condo board certification on Friday, May 23rd. That's next week, Friday morning, 9 a.m. to 1. The flyer goes out, if not tomorrow, Monday at the latest. And then the other ones coming up, we have association reserves, we have roofing, we have painting coming. And then up to June 24th, I have restoration again. Oh, one more class here to mention, July 17th, booking into July now. We also have another reserve class to cover the Sears and so on. So I look forward to having you again. And I appreciate everybody attending, like I said, and have a good week and be safe. Bye-bye.